So exciting to be here and so exciting to be speaking with Elisa and Muzhda today. Before we begin our questions, I just want to remind everybody that's watching that if you do have any questions for our panelists, please be sure to leave them right down below in the little Q&A section on your Zoom call, and we will get to them at the end of our session. But let's go ahead and dive right in. Thank you both for being with us. I want to start off with our first question, which is, why is it important to invest in girls' education in general? Mujda, do you want to start us off?
Yes, of course. So first of all, I'm so happy to be here and I can't wait to share more about my experiences and also to answer the questions. I think regarding to girls' investments in girls' education, one of the very first things that comes to my mind is about like girls investments in girls' education isn't just about the empowerment of girls or about women's empowerment. It is more about the societal empowerment. It is about the empowerment of everyone in the society. So this is the first thing that comes to my mind. But then apart from that, investments in girls' education, which leads to the empowerment of women, is also directly linked to the economic growth of the society. It is directly linked to the eradication of poverty, or even more to the equality, and more importantly, to peace building processes and even resolution of conflicts in different countries around the world. So this is the first thing that comes to my mind. But then apart from that, coming from a country like Afghanistan, where I have lived both lack of education and also presence of education. And what I've learned is that when we invest in girls' education, it provides girls tools to not only survive in their societies, but also thrive. And once girls thrive, they become strong, they make informed decisions, they can speak out, and whenever they face violence or anything unjust or unfair, they can speak out because they have the confidence in themselves. And on other hand, lack of investments in girls' education or lack of girls' education, it leads women and girls in positions of vulnerability, which can make them victims of child marriages, early pregnancies, to all the way domestic and systematic violence in society. So that being said, whenever I think about investment in girls' education, I think it more about the empowerment of society as a whole. Because why not invest in 50% of the society in order to have an empowered 100% of society? So this is what comes to my mind.
I love that ending statement. Why not invest in the other 50% to encompass our entire 100%? So, what are your thoughts on investing in girls' education? Why do you think it's important, Elisa?
Yeah, no, so happy to be here as well. I'm very happy also to share a panel with you, Muzda and Shriya. It's my pleasure. And I think that it's a ton of things. When I also think about girls' education, I do not relate it to just as Muzda said, it's just one factor. It's lots of them, and it impacts. As Nigel said, like some minutes ago, it's not just for one set of group of people, but for everyone by itself that will be benefited. um, whenever I think about education, I think it as more like something that will be like in a couple of years I will be studying this and then I will get this and this. More than a cycle, I think it is a really good tool and powerful, really powerful tool to get us to places where we can thrive, as Mosa said, but also where we can collaborate and sort of create leadership positions to empower other people, to create helping different communities that have different problems, to tackle issues that perhaps we didn't know we could tackle, to sort of understand more about societies and how they work, about where do we surround ourselves and what is happening in my community. What I love is that, for example, I've heard stories where people are like getting education and sort of starting their own campaigns, they started their own projects, and it's so inspiring to know that actually education is not just like a paper that you'll get at the end of a program or like a certificate. It's more about knowledge and what can you do with it. So I'm very inspired by all the people. I think that whenever someone tells me like what inspires you, it's stories and what people can do with education and also how they can help other communities. So education has tons of benefits for everyone, but especially global impact. So that's beautiful.
That's beautiful. This concept of it does impact everybody. And I think that when we think about investing in education in general, the two main points that you guys brought up was it does help society as a whole, but I want to understand what was your internal purpose for why you started in this advocacy. So in other words, like what was your personal motivation for why you decided to step into the girls' education space? Can we start with you this time, Elisa?
Yeah, for sure. I think that for me, well, I've been having this great motivation of my parents in terms of like being curious, discovering new things, and I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, I remember sort of learning different things and understanding that actually it's not just everything for me to just acknowledge and learn, but it was more about what can I do next. And one of the great opportunities that I had in 2021 was learning quantum computing. Technology for me was amazing. It's a whole new world that it's revolutionizing every single aspect of our life. And when I first heard about it, I was like, what's quantum computing? And I ended up realizing that this is a new technology that can make things more efficient and faster and help us to everyone. And for me, one of the main things was access. So if I was able to access to this course, why cannot other people access to this as well as me? So that was kind of my purpose at first, to understand that if I have the access to enter to this course and learn more about quantum computing and how this will change the world, why not sharing this with more people? Why not empowering and sharing more resources? Why not bringing more of the enthusiasm that I had and bring more people to experience the same? That was my feeling, that was my motivation, and that enabled me to connect with a ton, like a great community of students. I remember we were 1,000 students in the course, and I said, well, why not sending them a message? You know, the probabilities, and some of them replied, and we created this community of girls and students overall, that they are all welcome to learn about quantum computing. And I'm so happy that we were able to bring resources, create different materials that are easy to understand for people, that it's not just rocket science, that you will be learning about physics and I don't know how will it impact Mars, but also how you will see real applications. So for me, everything is about collaboration, how we work together with other students, with other peers, how we look for different solutions that we can actually implement, not just like, perhaps one day I'll do this, but then I do not know the steps that I will get to go there. And it's also about seeking support. How do we create a good community of students? For example, in my case, learning about quantum computing, how are we going to bring the right resources? How are we creating different videos or games that could be interactive and that could be provided for different classrooms? And also, how are we going to involve more girls in this area, which we know is underrepresented right now? So how can we really tackle this? So yeah.
That's actually wonderful. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that, if that's okay. I come from two educational institutions. I did my undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, and now I'm currently getting my MBA at Duke, both which, you know, heavily, heavily contribute to the quantum computing field. And they really push that. They push for people to be entering the STEM space. And I think that coming from a place of privilege, I can say, oh, it's easy to take that step into STEM. But for someone who might not have access to those resources, I was wondering, Elisa, if you could give everyone in the audience just like maybe one tip on if they do want to pursue a career in STEM. What do you recommend that they do right now to set themselves up for success in the future?
For sure. I think that for me, what has been key is looking for a community of support. It's very, very hard sometimes to be alone in a field that you love, but sometimes you don't see anyone that perhaps you feel like it's representing you. So having a great community of friends, perhaps teachers, mentors, it's key for me. So you can continue going on, ask for advice. Like, I'm actually stuck with this. What can I do? How can you help me? It's always nice to have that and to know that you're not alone. Sometimes we create different scenarios about our hair, like, hey, perhaps I'm the only one struggling in STEM areas. The STEM areas are actually hard. But the idea is that how can we thrive together? How can we try? How can we seek for help, mentorship? And there's lots of opportunities for us. Like right now, we're all connected with perhaps I saw that there's a lot of people from different countries here. So that's the power of internet. That's the power of our tools that we're using right now. How can we take really advantage of it? So yeah, I would love also to see you on campus, Shriya.
For everyone watching, Elisa and I found out just a few minutes before this panel that we do go to the same university. So that was exciting. But I am going to switch over to you, Mujda, and ask you the same question. What was your personal motivation for why you started working in girls' education advocacy?
So for me, I think when I counted, I think it's been more than 5 years that I've been advocating for girls' right to education. It started with the child marriage of my childhood best friend. So she was forced into a child marriage. And that was so challenging for me because I grew up with her. She was literally like my sister. We talked about our future dreams, goals, and she was so talented and smart. So realizing that simply because of the child marriage, she will no longer be able to pursue her dreams and become the person she wanted to become, that was like a reminder that I have to start advocating for her. So I started speaking out in my school, and that led me to speak out in different programs and all the way to start utilizing social media to advocate for the rights of girls to education, about child marriage, and more. But then after August 15, 2021, when the Taliban came into power, so we're a family of 7 and 4 of us are girls. And my family knew that they had to leave Afghanistan. We had no other choice to stay there because right now that we are speaking here, it has been 1,130 days that girls' education in Afghanistan has been banned. So they cannot go to school, they cannot go to university. It means they can't become who they want to become. So that being said, we became refugees to Pakistan. And in Pakistan, I was hoping that I will go to school. And suddenly I found myself that I can't go to school because of lack of certain documentations as a refugee. So I spent 1 year without the right to go to school. And at that time, finding myself that, okay, I can't go to school in my country, girls cannot go to school in my country, and I can't go to school even here, it was so challenging. I think the amount of stress that not just I felt, but also my sisters and many kids around me felt was just too much. And then one day, I think it's similar to the story of Elisa, I started learning coding, and suddenly I found my passion in coding. I was so like interested in it. I was learning every single day, and I was spending hours in learning how to code. And then suddenly I found hope and I found passion for the future. I was excited, I was happy, as if nothing happened. It was like so different. I was like, is it the magic? So it was really a good feeling. And then I realized, okay, if I now have access to these resources, why not share it to one refugee? Why not share it to one girl in Afghanistan? Why not do that? So I came up with a course. So I started a course. It was like teaching HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and here and there, like web development. And then I planned it out. I didn't know anything about teaching. Okay, I'm so very new. And then suddenly I posted, I said, okay, even if one girl show up, that is a lot for me. And suddenly I saw that it's 30 girls. 30 girls showed up to the course, and it really motivated me. And for the past 2 months, we started learning different like skills, and it was so fun to talk with them. And I found that education is so powerful, especially for women, because when we get with the right to educate ourselves, it is like a wing. That is the moment that we can think that, yes, now I can fly, now I can become who I want to become. So that experience itself led me to realize that education is the most powerful tool that we can give to anyone in the world, especially to girls. So when I came to Canada, now it's been 2 years that I'm in Canada. I put it as my mission to advocate further for girls' right to education. So we distribute books to girls. I go to different events. I come to events like this to be a voice for girls' right to education because it is so powerful. And I think my motivation is increasing every single day. And also to kind of shortly point out to another thing, that why a group such as Taliban, they're so scared of the rights of girls to education. Why in the past 3 years they have been banning girls to education? When we ask this question, we realize that they are scared. They're scared the fact that when girls are educated, they can change the world. They can change the society. And it is very hard for an educated nation to manipulate and control an educated nation. So I think this is sort of my motivation because I have lived it, and I hopefully it is my mission in life to further advocate for the rights of girls to education and make it as accessible as possible.
You are so inspiring. And I just want to reiterate that one quote that Mujda threw in there, which was, an educated nation is hard to control. And I think I resonate very heavily with your story, Mujda, because just a generation ago, my grandmother didn't study past like the eighth grade, I think. And my mother really fought those barriers and was the first in my family to sort of immigrate to the US and, give me the opportunities that I have today. And I think it's only my right to understand that I take that and I give back to the generations that made all of this possible because there's so many challenges that are happening in the world, and we don't realize that they are so close to who we are in the immediate world. We think, oh, they were forever ago, like this is a forever problem ago, but we don't realize how immediate they are in the world. And switching to that topic, I want to understand back to you, Mujda, this time. Globally, what are these challenges that we think we are still facing when advancing girls' education today? And if you do have any idea on how we can overcome these, I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, I think there are different challenges that are sort of stopping us to advance the girls' right to education and sort of so many things that are like acting like a barrier. But I think at the core of the challenges, it is the governments. It is the lack of good governance and lack of good leadership because government plays the most fundamental role in every society. And if the government's policies, if the government's plans and strategies does not prioritize girls' education, women empowerment, it would be so hard for all of us as a society to work on advancing girls' education. If an NGO works so hard, if an advocate like me or Elisa or anyone here works so hard to provide education to girls, but on the other hand, our governments does not share the same common values and goals with us, it would be so hard. So I think the way to solve that is to focus on the governments, push them, challenge them. And if they are not prioritizing our roles, our sort of rights and values, we have to stop them. We have to change those governments, change those leaderships. So I think at the core level, it is them. But then apart from that, how we can collaborate globally, like how we can create networks together to share resources that are more accessible and more in terms of the quality. So I think technology can play an important role. So how can we make sure that make technology more accessible to everyone? But I think that being said, at the core, I see that the government and good leadership will be the only way to solve these big challenges.
That's so insightful. Now I'm going to get your perspective, Elisa, on what challenges do you think we're still facing in advancing girls' education today globally? And if you have any idea on how we can overcome those, I'd love to hear that as well.
For sure. No, I will add then to Moses as well. I think that's a really key thing, policymaking and sort of understanding what is happening in terms of we're doing lots of projects, lots of ideas, but then after that, like we go to schools or perhaps we go to organizations or we want to organize something with our city councils, and then what happens? There's lots of papers. There's no help for youth organizations perhaps, or organizations that have this social impact. And then what happens? That the events cannot be done. So that's on one side. On the other side, I think that what I faced so far is cultural barriers and educational aspects of it. So sometimes there's lots of people who face these challenges of, I'm super encouraged right now I'm super motivated to learn about maths, to continue learning about science and coding, for example. Let's say there's lots of languages right now where we can learn, but hey, there's someone perhaps in your family or someone in your surroundings that perhaps tells you like, hey, actually that's not for you. Or if you're failing at some things, there's someone who might be telling you like, actually that is not for girls, that is not for women. So there's lots of challenges that could be within our society in terms of global aspects, more in city councils and policymaking, but also in our homes and at near spaces where we think that I think that it's really challenging, especially for young people, to understand that actually you can do it. You can do it. There might be people who might be telling you like you're not capable or that it's not for you. But the thing is, there is a community out there that might be fitting for you, to help you, to support you, and to provide you resources. Many people, for example, do not have the access to once again get resources in technological education or perhaps in, let's say, sustainable education. So how are they supposed to learn that this is, for example, recyclable, and this is not recyclable, and this you have to make a good use of plastic, for example. If we do not have the right education, we're not able to make actions to contribute to solve the problem. So I think it's really important to start by reaching out to different organizations right now. There's lots of activities and programs that are being online, that are held online, and are completely free for everyone to keep learning and educating themselves. I think that if there's one barrier here that might be an obstacle for you to learn, there's another opportunity here, another window, another door where you can seek access and seek support. And that's the beautiful thing about interconnectivity and reaching out for help in this online world nowadays. I think that sometimes we just see bad news about perhaps social media, or let's say Instagram, TikTok, but how can we really take advantage of it? How can we seek for support and seek for this girl up change, right? And I think that I'm very looking forward to it. I'm optimistic about new communities of people, new leaders that are sort of raising their voices and telling to others like, hey, actually, I'm a student, I'm a youth person that really wants to make a change, and they're raising their voices against policymakers, against people that have really the power to make change. So yeah, everyone, you can do it. It's the thing of like mentality, first of all, the mindset that you have, and also the purpose that you build throughout education and by learning also your purpose. So yes.
That's beautiful. So motivational. You absolutely can do it. And I love that this topic comes up because sometimes we forget that there are so many free resources available to us in this interconnected, globalized world. For anybody listening today, remember that Girl Up has a host of free resources for you to browse any topic, all the way from girls' education to gender-based violence to STEM to women in sports, everything in between. So please feel free to utilize those resources. But I also do want to talk about something a little bit more systemic and sort of get into the layers and the nitty-gritty of what are the unique conflicts of the girls that are unfortunately living in conflict zones or conflict areas around the world. And this might be a little more catered to Mujda, but what can we do to provide more education resources to girls living in those conflict areas or areas of other crises?
Yeah, so I think this question also sort of links to the previous points that I made in regards to the core problem, like what is the root cause of that conflict? And if we are tend to become collective and sort of try to provide educational resources or empowerment tools to girls in those areas, the first thing is that we must focus to processes that can provide peace for them, that can provide shelter for them, that so they can be safe, because if girls are not safe, it's very hard for them to thrive. So they need the safety first. So those basic human needs must be met in order for them to be empowered and thrive in their societies. But I think we should not also just ignore the fact that still we can do work. One other way could be providing them with internet so they can learn online, providing them with computers so they can learn online, or creating safe spaces in some areas that are mostly like safe in the conflict zones so they can come in those areas and they can learn together. And also sharing the resources, which we talked about it. So there are many resources available around the world. How can we make sure to collect all those resources together and provide those resources to them? One of the things that currently we are doing with Code Green Afghanistan is we're providing books to girls in Afghanistan, because one book can empower one girl, and that one book can be shared to another girl and she can learn. So book distribution is something very effective. And then I think another way that we can empower girls in conflict zones in terms of resources is mental health resources. It is so important for those girls to feel safe in their minds, so that way they can find some ways, some motivation to learn. Because if they're every single day they're dealing with traumas, they're dealing with grief and anxiety and depression, it is very hard for them to grow. So I think these three main resources, shelter, safety, basic needs, all the way to coming to collectively working together to share resources, including internet, technology, computers, and at the core of it, those mental health resources is so important. And I think that would be my answer.
That's so powerful to understand the bare bones necessities that we need to first survive before we can thrive. And something I want to ask you, Elisa, is the theme for today's summit is Unstoppable Us, which is uniting for change, something Mujda was talking about, which is when we pool our resources, when we all come together, realistically, we can help each other. And I want to understand, how do you think we can best position and support young people to truly unite for change?
For sure. No, first of all, it's been great. I've been loving to hear this great conversation. And I think one of the main things, whenever we think about women empowerment or being unstoppable, we think about perhaps role models. I don't know if you can think right now of your role model. I will totally encourage you, everyone, to think about 3 people that you might think are your role models. And sometimes when we think about them, we might think about perhaps family. We might think about really great people that are like really good in good stage. Perhaps they're really famous. Sometimes they're like really known by everyone, or they've done a lot of things. And I think that that's amazing. But on the other side, we might be role models, and that's a good thing that we need to understand. That sometimes we think like, hey, I need to like accomplish all those things, and I need to like do this and that, and then in like 5 years more, I will like continue and do this perhaps goal and accomplish this goal. And I think that one of the things that I would love everyone to sort of keep in mind after this is that we can be role models, and that's the impact that we can make in terms of if we know something about it. For example, Muzhda, she knows a lot about coding, but like anything that you might love about it, share your interest with others. Be the role model you would like others to be for you. And I think that's the key thing about us, that we can really empower others and share motivations. If we share, for example, if I share my passion about quantum computing with others, I might not get everyone into quantum computing, but the thing is that if someone at least gets this little bit of a spark about quantum computing, that'll be excellent for me. And also understand that not everyone will like, what you do, or what you like to do. But the thing is to inspire and keep bringing awareness of new things and your passions. It's always great to understand that you can be a role model and you can keep sharing what your interests are with a great community of others. There might be students, there might be adults, any age, any group. You might be the person that will be able to make that impact. So I'm really happy that I've been meeting lots of girls, women, and overall students that have inspired me a lot, that have shared stories where they're like, I really struggled, and now I'm able to share this with other people and sort of help them to go to different obstacles. You can do the same. It doesn't need to be rocket science or anything else. You might do what you like and share that with others and really make an impact. So yes.
That's so heartwarming to hear that you both are not only uplifting and providing that community for others, but they are also doing the same thing for you as well. And something I always like to say is we see these lofty goals of what a role model is, and you think, oh, like I have to be like them. And I'm like, no, sometimes it can just be your best friend's older sister. It can be your next door neighbor. It can be your grandma. Like they are all, experiencing life for the very first time, and they can all truly serve as role models, because I don't necessarily think being a hero means saving everybody. It can sometimes just mean saving yourself. So thank you both so much for that wonderful conversation. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm so glad that I got to speak to these wonderful change makers, and that wraps up our panel for today.
Thank you so much.